Buen dia. I'm Jillian Sidoti.
Hey, and I'm Nate Dodson,
and I'm
I don't
joined by
speak
Nate
Spanish.
Dodson. I'm in Puerto. That's right. That's right. Buen dia. Just you guys just start there, and you're ready to come to Puerto Rico. That's your foundation right there. Buen dia. All right. So buen dia. Guess what, everyone? The election is over. It's now officially over for about a week. And that means, what's this mean for you? What's this mean for all of us? Get back to work. Get back to work. Stop your belly aching. No more complaining. It is what it is. You like it, great. You don't like it, great too, because now you can just focus on something else. And you know what you can focus on? Your business. Mind your own business. We're going to help you mind your own business. Today, we're answering questions that we've received. We've got a full list of them. However, despite having a full list of questions, one thing we're going to do is we're going to take your questions live. And all you have to do is there's a comment box right below this video, whether you're watching it on Facebook or YouTube or your other favorite channel. You can put the question down there and we will receive it. And we will answer it. So yeah, pass it on to you.
Love it. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of cerveza, baño, izquierda, and derecho. As long as we can all get through all of Puerto Rico with that limited amount of Spanish language, we should all come to party at your spot.
Yeah.
Well, we were just kind of talking about, working with clients, and inevitably, if you're an entrepreneur, you have a business. Sometimes you gotta eat dirt, and you end up being the bad guy. And always a good time.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
I think you like being the bad guy. I think you take some weird sadistic pleasure in it, to be honest with you. If I'm
maybe a little bit. I also don't mind firing people, so it's just one of those things that rolls off the back.
I've never been good at firing people. I think I've done in the past, I've done mostly the passive aggressive thing of just making it so uncomfortable that somebody quits.
Well,
that's terrible. I should just be more direct, but no, I make people's lives miserable while making my own life miserable and making everybody around us miserable. And then eventually they quit.
Well, I was taught a kind way to fire people, and it's the compliment sandwich. And anytime you're giving criticism, you always start out with a compliment. Hey, really appreciated all your hard work and efforts, and you are great at X, Y, and Z. However, it's not working out. Here's the criticism, and I'm sure there's a better place for you. It's just not here.
I'm going to remember that. That's good. I used the compliment sandwich, and you know who's great using a compliment sandwich was Steve Jobs. I actually originally heard compliment sandwiches from Steve Jobs. Anytime somebody criticized him, he would say that was a wonderful question. And, we're not always going to be great, but, and just would completely disarm his critics that way. It was quite fascinating to watch. But the one time I used a compliment sandwich that it really worked out for me was I was at a resort here in Puerto Rico, and the service was just god awful. It was awful. Something had gone terribly awry. And so instead of taking my wrath out on them and writing my wrath on like a Google review or something, I Facebook messaged them and said, hey, I want to let you know that I love this resort. This resort is so beautiful. However, you have some real room for improvements. Let me tell you about my experience last night, and I can't wait to see how you improve it in the future. Before we checked out from that resort, they said, listen, we thank you so much for your feedback. Come down to the restaurant. Breakfast is on us. And they rolled out the red carpet, and we got like an amazing free breakfast. So compliment sandwich, everyone.
As well as the other lesson of squeaky wheel.
Yeah,
That good old you don't
yeah,
get what you don't ask for. And sometimes if
right.
you complain, you get a little bit more.
Yeah, so compliment sandwich for getting what you want or getting something for free and for firing people. Look at we're already providing endless value here at Entrepreneur. It's quite amazing. But let's provide value by a question. I'm going to ask you one. Is that okay?
Please do.
If I ask. All right. So this one is something I know we both believe in, but I am very curious because you keep people around for a despite talking about how you fire people, you keep people around for a long time. They like you, they like working with you. So the question I have for you is how can you build strong company culture?
Honestly, and people don't really think about it, it's one of the most important parts of starting, building, and growing a business that can go on beyond you. What I really mean by that is if you have a business, inevitably, eventually, you have a team and you've got to rely on the team. And you know what? You don't have the ability to oversee everything at all times. Hopefully, that's the goal of scaling and getting bigger. But having a culture where the team is able to hold each other accountable, but also at the same time, the team feels comfortable relying and leaning on one another. And at the end of the day, that they're just simply happier. It is a statistical fact that happy people are better employees, are better at accomplishing goals. So it's really an investment into your company by investing into the team, which is definitely the way that we've approached company culture in every business that I've ever done.
Okay. However, I want to follow up with that because I want to get really detailed here. What has happened in corporate America, what we've seen is that people believe company culture is defined by the number of pizza parties you can give them and the number of free cakes in the conference room, right? And that is proven not only to not work but to be like this needless pandering. So how do you ensure that your employees are happy? How do you find out what makes them happy, Nate?
To begin with, you ask, but when you talk about the number of pizza parties, there's some truth to that, but not the hey, woo, let's have fun, but creating the team camaraderie, creating a situation where they're comfortable and actually enjoy working with one another. That goes a long way into what company culture is at the end of the day. So as an example, kind of the way that we introduced a new type of company culture once I acquired your old law firm, which was everybody spread out across America. There are no pizza parties. It's not really that possible. But having daily Zoom meetings, having weekly management meetings, but not just, hey, let's talk about the tasks of the day, but how's your life? How are your kids doing?
Oh wow.
What's interesting?
Right.
Like, actually, let's get to know one another, not just, well, did you get me that voicemail on time? And then start criticizing about that. That just turns into that company culture of negativism.
Yeah. Like, okay, let's talk about that for a second. I hope you don't mind me. But I think this
Please.
is very useful for people because, yeah, we're moving to this environment of Zoom culture. I mean, we're already there, right? And I don't think a lot of people want to go back to the big office building. I think there's some value in that, especially for me,
Definitely.
particularly when I first started having, well, not when I first started having children, but when I was in the throes of having children, just separating that home life from that office life was really important so that I could make sure that I wasn't working constantly at home. However, the reality is that we're more of a Zoom culture than ever before. So you have these daily meetings. How long are the daily meetings? And do you have a schedule for them or how do you run those?
So we've, as an organization, grown to the extent that different departments have different meeting times where they all will get together. But
Okay.
as an example, we have all of our attorneys. They get together every day at this same time. What's
Okay.
going on with the clients, the transactions, and eat one another's lives. The administrative side does the exact same thing. What's going on? They more run the business systems. Are there any issues or kind of surprise occurrences that everybody needs to know about? And then very similarly, what's going on in your life? Do you have grandkids now? Woohoo, let's celebrate. But creating that camaraderie and real joy within the group
Mhm.
is possible off Zoom. Not only that, it allows Zoom, I think, allows everybody to live their best lives, not get forced to and stuck in. Everybody has to live in this one little area. I
Right.
think people are much happier now that they can live in the mountains of Colorado to the beaches of Southern California. And I've got employees from Florida onto the other side and everywhere in between. And the Zoom meetings is exactly what binds us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, okay. So you do these daily meetings, you do weekly meetings. What about an annual meeting? Do you do an annual meeting, and do you find that helps with your company culture as well?
Yes, and it is so important. We haven't the last couple of years, mainly because, again, we've just spread out everywhere. We've grown everywhere. It is tough to get everybody together, all from every corner of the country to one little place. So we've unfortunately haven't done the quarterly get-togethers that we used to, the annual holiday parties that we used to, but that's just what makes company culture and make sure that it gets paid attention to all that more important, because you're not just looking at one another in the eyes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, I mean, I think like one of the great things about, when we did the law firm, one thing that everybody looked forward to was the annual meeting. I mean, it was a lot of work, and I mean, it wasn't just all fun and games, but it was we did it off site. We usually did it at a winery. And to note, like we did it at a winery, not because all of us were like winos or drinkers. Like actually half of the office was Mormon, so they didn't drink at all, right? It wasn't about the drinking culture. It was about the environment. We were in nature to a certain extent because there were vineyards there. And it was just a space away from the office, and we all had our duties to come prepared for that particular meeting. And we came prepared for that meeting. And then we would have this big glorious dinner, and it was filled with good food and good conversation and things like that. So things like that really can make a huge difference in your company culture, because it really does give people something to look forward to. And we also did, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but I guess it's kind of hard because you guys are all spread out, but we used to do white elephant gifts
Mm-hmm.
for Christmas. And those were always fun. Sometimes we would attach a theme to it. It was super fun.
Oh, I love it. Well, that's having those holiday parties. We used to do a big one at my house for the entire
Oh yeah.
company, and it was when travel was a whole lot easier. We would do the white elephant gift exchange, but I can tell you, once you get up to about 50 different trades
Oh, you
with people stealing, like we finally was just like, I give up. I don't want to sit through another hour of this white elephant. I'm out.
I'm just taking my gift and going. Oh, that's so funny. That's great. So, all right. Well, listen. Let's put that one to bed. That's how you guys build a strong company culture. Again, I want to remind you to put your questions in the comments below if you guys have any questions that you want to follow up on, or anything about building your business. Which one do you want to tackle a question on here, Nate, if you will?
It sounds good. Well, really, today I would love to focus on, and we're already starting to. You've got a business. Now you're starting to scale. That actually is when company culture gets to be important, because company culture, when you're a solopreneur, there's not a lot to worry about. But so you're scaling, you're bringing your team together, and you have to have the systems put into place, the business and the operating systems. Before we kind of get into the specifics, Jillian, do you have any thoughts on how you scale a business?
The big thing is to think about what systems in place are going to survive scaling, right? People don't think about this, but I believe it or not, this is something I've always thought about. And the reason why I've always thought about, will this system survive scaling, is because one of my very first jobs that I worked for a Harvard professor in Cambridge, outside of Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And she was a commercial real estate expert. That was what her PhD was in and how these massive corporations scaled their real estate effectively. And I learned so much from her about commercial real estate from a massive, like a Google perspective, from a Sun Microsystems perspective kind of thing. One of her jobs as an advisor to one of these big Silicon Valley tech companies was Sun Microsystems or Oracle, one of those big companies. And what they had Donut Wednesdays. And so they had donuts for everybody on Wednesdays. And as the company scaled and grew, Donut Wednesdays became like they were delivering donuts to departments at like 4:00 in the afternoon. It became like a massive, massive undertaking to get these donuts to everybody in Sun Micro, whatever company it was. We'll just say it's Sun Microsystem. And the thing is, they couldn't get rid of it. They couldn't get rid of Donut Wednesdays because it meant so much to the employees. It was part of their company culture. So they had to really learn how to build a system around something as simple as delivering donuts. So I want you to think about this. So this is where, I say, will your system survive scaling when you're planning it? This does not mean, that you buy the most expensive software or the most expensive CRM, or, you buy, or you get like consultants, really expensive, consultants from Accenture or something like that to scale your business properly. It means that you just want to be able to plan for those events. And how are we going to scale around this, even for something as simple as delivering donuts on Wednesdays?
We use some buzzwords, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask you some kind of just basic terms. And
I hope I know the answer.
Oh, you're going to know the answer, but I'm just looking for a definition so we all understand what we're talking about, and things as simple as, what does a system mean?
Mm-hmm. A system, like, this is the great thing. And again, I learned this from some other partners I had in another business. A system is just, how do you do things? What are the steps you take to accomplish something? And everything in your business should have a system. I was systemizing things down to like, well, I mean, this is something that's pretty basic of a system, but how do you answer the phone here? Yep. When the phone rings, who answers it? When do they answer it? How do they answer it? What do they say? If they get a question they don't know the answer to, what happens after that? That kind of thing. What is the system for answering the phone? So system is just how you do things. And this is, the thing is you always want to start off with the simplest system possible. So for example, going back to my CRM example of not buying the most expensive CRM that exists, start with a spreadsheet, start with a Word document. But get the system down, figure it out, and then you can tinker with it from there. And we see this in major companies. Like, I always want to default to Tesla, but they seem to scale and systematize pretty quickly and easily. So not a great example, but I can't, for whatever reason, I can't think of an example right now. But if you want to look at um, Microsoft. Microsoft started off with operating systems and scaled from there. You don't just start with everything that you're going to do. You start with one thing, you do it well, then you improve that one thing you did well. We're on Windows, whatever now, since Windows has been out since I think 1994, 92, maybe before
well
that,
above that.
89. Was it 1989? I don't remember when Windows
Something
came
like
out.
that.
But it was like, if you guys, if you're old enough, you remember what old Windows looked like, right? And it looks vastly different now than it did 30 years ago.
The real question being, is it an actual improvement? It sure got slower.
Well, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it's got bloatware and stuff in it now, right? I guess. So now, 1985. Oh God, I was way off.
It's been a little while. You bring up
I was
different.
about 9 years off.
It's all right. Well, they had DOS first, so
Yeah,
that even goes way back before that. You've helped define scaling in terms of, or getting back to what a system is. So you're saying a system is not always technology, but
oh no,
also it can be technology. And that being the case, do you have any recommendations of the types of technology that every business absolutely has to have? And I'm going to use CRM as an easy example. But does other technology platforms come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to use a CRM, I actually wrote this down in I use an old-fashioned planner, by the way. I wrote this down in my planner today, which was that I was going to explore the possibilities of a system we use, which is High Level. That is the CRM. However, everybody out there, I'm going to tell you right now, before you jump into any CRM, I mean, not to go back to like rock, paper, scissors, but stick to the basics. Stick to one system. And what I mean by that is choose your poison. Pick your poison, I guess, right? Are you Microsoft? Are you Google? Are you Apple? What is your poison? And what I mean by that is, do you use Google Drive, some machination of Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, or do you use Microsoft Excel, Word, OneDrive, and pick that and start using that and make sure everybody's on the same system. One thing that drove me crazy in a couple of the businesses that I've been in is that you always had a partner who's like, I prefer to use like Netscape instead of Chrome or something stupid like that. It just threw everything off because, and that's a bad example, but you get the idea. They'd insist on using a different email client than the email client that everybody else was using, which then screws up your CRM and the whole 9 yards. So one thing you just start from the top and work your way down. And I would look at it from and at the end of the day, they're all going to end up costing the same, relatively speaking. So cost actually shouldn't be really something you think about because they all start off free and scale up from there.
I would say also make sure that whatever CRM you end up going with has the capabilities that you actually need. To give you an example, I use 3 different CRMs for 3 different businesses. Each one of them has their own quirks to them. But as an example, in the law firm, we use HubSpot because it's unbelievably robust in terms of its marketing capabilities and everything that can be done. But it can be relatively expensive once you start adding all the bells and whistles.
It really can. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. High Level, way cheaper. It just hasn't been there quite as long as HubSpot. So it doesn't necessarily quite have all of the different technology gadgets built into it, I guess, for lack of another word. But it has more than, as an example, I use Pipeline CRM very specifically for cold email campaigns. it just integrates well into other softwares that are very specifically set up for that type of operation. And so you do have to pay attention to what is a CRM plugging into and what do you really need it for.
I have a quick question for you. So Pipeline, what is Pipeline kind of like a ClickFunnels type of thing?
No, it is just another CRM. It just happened to be built with a growth plan of being able to plug into other email marketing systems. So it's not like High Level that says we have our own, or HubSpot that says we have our own emailing system. This Pipeline, where you're talking about, think about what you really need and stay simple. It really is simple. It's just a CRM, but it was built to plug into other marketing softwares that are specifically set up to run their own campaigns.
Okay. All right. Well, that's very cool. All right. What else do we want to talk about scaling?
Let's talk about, you know what? There's two different types of kind of oversight and management systems that we've used in the past. I know you've also used EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. It's described in a couple of books. One is Get a Grip. That's kind of a story about a company and them implementing this entrepreneur operating system. Another book, Traction, that kind of just covers the technical side of things. Do you remember running EOS and how the L10 meetings would actually work?
Yeah, so we did Traction, and I loved Traction. And by the way, if you're looking up the book Traction, it's by Gino Wickman, I think, because there's a couple of books out there called Traction, and they're not all the same. So you want to go with that one. And it was great because for somebody like me, I have a tad bit of ADHD, which has gotten way worse the older I get. But I have a tad of ADHD. So if we'd go into a meeting and somebody said something else like that wasn't on the schedule of the meeting, I would, it'd be like squirrel. Like I would whip my head around to focus on whatever thing was said and completely change the subject and take the meeting off the rails. I was great at taking meetings off rails. And that's Traction helps you not do that. There's also a book by Michael Hyatt that I used in conjunction with Traction. And I'm going to get the book. I'm Googling it right now. I'm going to look up the book for you. It's No Fail Meetings. No Fail Meetings also helped with implementing that the Traction and really sticking to your rock. There's these things, rocks, your quarterly rocks, where those are the things you're really, really working on and you're super, super uber focused on. And that's for me, that was what was really, really super important, was to keep those meetings on track. Because if you kept the meetings on track and you actually did the meetings, that's another thing too, is actually being consistent with the meetings and actually having the meetings and making sure everybody showed up and shows up on time, then you were more likely to actually reach your corporate goals. And I'll tell you this, somebody we both mutually know and have worked with, Grant Cardone, taught me that you don't show up to the meeting late. You do not show up to the meeting late. You show up to the meeting on time. The meeting runs on time. The meeting goes by the schedule and the end. And he's been very successful by just implementing that one thing, is having that daily meeting. It's the same meeting every day. Everybody, no one is exempt from the meeting, and you better show up on time.
So he more runs kind of those daily huddle meetings that was talking about, with kind of the daily Zoom get-togethers. And I've actually been on one of his daily huddle calls before.
Yeah.
And, the question is basically, what have you accomplished? What's the win? And with their organization, it's always, who's the next sales prospect that you're working with? And it's like those 3 questions, and it goes throughout the team. They get it done within 15 minutes, talk a little bit about great personal stuff, and then move on. So very similar purpose and structure to kind of what we use to build that company culture through Zoom. Very similar goals as well.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah. And I mean, but just having that action, that system, right? That's just another system of having those meetings, but having that system in place gives you consistency. Everybody knows what to expect. Everybody knows what they need to come prepared with. I need to come prepared with my win. I need to come prepared with what I'm working on. I need to come prepared with what I'm struggling with. Otherwise you just devolve into chaos. So you systemize everything. And by the way, this isn't just good for business. This is good for life. This is good for life. You know, that's how I lost. I mean, having a system is how I have managed to lose 30 pounds in the last year. You know, as a 46-year-old woman. And if there's any other 46-year-old women or women in their 40s out there, you know how hard it is to lose weight once you get up there. And but it was the system, right? The system was, I did this for a workout. I did it at this time of day. I followed this particular routine. I ate those were all my systems. I ate this kind of food. I didn't drink. I stopped drinking for certain periods of time, things like that. And if you apply that same philosophy of systems to your life and to your business, like things will go better. They will go better. Promise.
So since you brought that up, you know, we have done the EOS for, I don't know, I've probably done it for as long as it's been around, close to a decade. Something that we definitely, the reason why it works well with our company is because things aren't necessarily set in stone. It's not like that factory line. Things are always changing. And having these weekly meetings where we dive in a little bit deeper into what's everybody's goals, what are their tasks, and how do you make it, we would call it SMART, being specific, manageable. Can you measure the what the goal ends up looking like? But we really have used that because our goals and tasks and how we do things was always changing. I wanted to bring that up because there's another operating system that I don't think they really had perfected while you were running Crowdfunding Lawyers, but it's run by, the company is scalable. It's a mastermind called the Founders Board, and it's a great kind of a different type of running your business education, and it is more about creating the playbooks for every system, down to every step, every team member that's supposed to do something, every decision. And whether you decide yes or no, that changes who does what and what the next reactions are. So it was great kind of designing these systems step by step by step by step. And if you're running a scalable business that's doing the same thing over and over and over, that is the secret of how you go from making $100,000 in revenue to $100 million in revenue, is you have to have that same system that can go and grow with your entire team.
Yeah, exactly. And know exactly how that looks. And have you ever read about one thing I'm getting fascinated with right now is flat organizations?
Please share.
Do you know, are you familiar with this? It's basically the concept of getting rid of middle management altogether.
Okay.
So yeah, so a flat organizational structure is basically where there's like, it's executives and then maybe, you know, some assistant executives and then everyone else. So there's only like so many bosses. There's no, it might be my boss's boss, but there's no my boss's boss's boss is boss's boss.
Is that a scalable concept? Because how, you know, who's managing one another if you have no corporate hierarchy? And the reality is, and you know this, you can only manage so many people, so much workload, and then you're capped. There's not really
Right.
much else you can pay attention to.
Right. So I think the reason why I like this flat organizational structure is because it does get rid of middle management. It does get you like rid of useless, people to a certain extent. But what I really like about it is I think that in a lot of ways it gives autonomy back to the employee. It gives them power, right? Okay, so let's really dig down on this, because if you give your employees this power to self-govern their work, right? How do you do that effectively? You have to have a system. You have to have a system for which they can follow, right? So, and then if you create the system and everybody understand, it sounds very cultish, kind of is, right? So you're starting your own cult within your company, if you will. And the system is your mantra, and people have to understand what the system is, work within the system. But then what you do by getting rid of these like middle management positions where people are always asking permission is you're giving autonomy to your employees to find ways to improve and present those improvements straight up the chain of command.
It's interesting. It was one of the things I was taught at this scalable program, and I love it. And it's in part for dealing with hurdles that your team members or your employees may have, and they call it their 1-3-1. Number one, what's the problem? 3 is what are 3 potential solutions, and 1 is what would you recommend? And once you have your team, they're doing this exercise every time they have a question. You're actually building your own confidence in the team's decisions, as you can say, that sounds fantastic, run with it. And giving the team the confidence to be able to run with things as well. Great way to have people start thinking for themselves. And they called it the 1-3-1 strategy.
I love that. I like that a lot. That's great. So, you know what? We do have a question from Husam. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Husam says, I have a business concept that would connect patients in chronic pain with the correct provider that has the technology to help them in less than 30 minutes, no pills, no needles. I would like to take this concept out nationwide. The question is who to connect with in order to scale this concept. Well, I mean, that's one of those questions I would call a loaded question, because it requires me to ask you a bunch of other follow-up questions, and we can have a mini conversation here in the comments, Husam, if you'd like. But the questions I would ask you are, well, what do you need? You want to scale this concept, but what's stopping you from scaling it? Who do you need to connect with? I have no idea. I don't know what you need. I don't know what the concept is. It sounds good. No pills, no needles to stop chronic pain. I know a lot of people who suffer with chronic pain. If they can do it without pills, they'd be happy to figure that out for sure. So my question for you is, what's stopping you from doing this right now? You say it's a who, but is it really a who, or is it a money problem, or is because if you have this concept, open a storefront and just get going. But I have a feeling that's not really the problem. The problem must be a money problem.
And Jillian, thanks for covering a few weeks ago. I was actually at a conference of small public companies. And I just wanted to bring that up, because actually had listened to some investor presentations of very similar companies. And well, it was, of course, an investment conference. So at the end of the day, everybody's complaint was, I need more money. The uses of it was always where you're kind of identifying what would actually help. Because frankly, some of them were just looking for, we need inventory, or we have to pay for more marketing to get, industry reach. And then others, and this is what I wanted to bring up, literally were able to hire a sales firm, a distributor. They cost something as well, but hiring some other third-party sales group that has a track record is one of the fastest ways to scale. But at the end of the day, you still need to have the money and budget to be able to pay for it, because building a business just is never cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. Building a no. After our discussion about bootstrapping last week, right? And how we pretty much tell you don't do that, or at least try to avoid it.
You know, it's it makes sense to try to avoid it when possible, but everybody starts with their side hustle before they can build it into an operating, scaling business. Did you ever have side hustles?
Yeah. Oh God. All right. I do want to talk about side hustles. I want to change the banner here. So anybody who's just like kind of got us on mute and listening, they know we're changing the subject to side hustles now. All right. I want to come in close, everyone. Come in close, young people. I want to talk about side hustles for a second. When you're young, perhaps without child, that is your time to do side hustles. You should be doing side hustles. You are not too good for side hustles. I had a side hustle I've always had a side hustle. Who am I kidding? I've never not had a side hustle. I've always had a side hustle. We might call it something different, like a different stream of income or something like that. But I literally graduated law school and had a side hustle. I had side hustles while I was in law school. I have every business I've ever had in order to get it started, in order to finance my side hustle so I could get that up and going, and then quit the job and start another side hustle. You need a side hustle. It's not bad. It's not torture. You're not you don't need a fainting couch because you have a side hustle. Nate's had side hustles. I had side hustles. I used to law firm. I was so afraid I wasn't going to have enough money to pay my employees that I ran the law firm during the day, would go home, grab something to eat, and then go to another job at night for 4 hours. So you're not too good for a side hustle. There. My rant is now over.
I mean, you think you're right. We've all done it. At some point, the side hustle turns into full-time focus.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think there's a trigger? Like, when were you comfortable from saying, okay, this was a side hustle, I've got another gig, I've got other things I'm doing, to, you know what, I'm going to go feet first, all the way, good old balls to the wall, I'm going to do this business? Like, how do you go from side hustle to full-time?
Well, couple things. I mean, this has happened to me a couple of times where the side hustle took over and I was able to completely do that, or I got rid of the side hustle. So I'll talk about when I got rid of the side hustle, because the side hustle wasn't my primary. And that was when I was running the law firm. And honestly, I enjoyed my side hustle. My side hustle was being a professor at a university. And for all of you that they're going like, well, that's not a real side hustle. That's impressive and stuff. Because I used to get that all the time too. It's not impressive when you're, you're tired at night and the last thing you want to do is grade a bunch of papers. So the thing that got me was I had a class in that particular situation. I had a class that happened to be a really not great class. They were cheaters, to be frank. They weren't good students. They were they kind of tipped me over the edge. And one of my clients who I admired very much called me and he said, "You sound distracted and upset." And I said, and I just told him, I said, I've been teaching these classes at this local university And this class I have right now is they're cheaters, and I don't know how to deal with it. I can't fail the whole class for cheating. And he just said, quit. Just quit. Don't you make enough money as a lawyer? And I was like, huh, I do make enough money as a lawyer. So, that time was different. It was, like I had a tipping point, if you will. But I've had those tipping points a couple of times. For when I was working on the record label, I quit my job to go all in on my side hustle because we got an opportunity to go on tour. And so we were touring around, and, obviously you can't really have a side hustle if you're doing that. So it's really just, it's really, you're just going to have that moment. I think that moment is just going to come to you. Now, if you're like, I don't want to do this side hustle, I'm only doing this side hustle, or I don't want this job, I'm only doing this job to support my side hustle, or whatever it might be, then this is again where you come up with the system, you come up with the goals, come up with some quarterly goals, and figure out when is the time that I can actually quit my job in order to be all in on my side hustle. And maybe that's a number.
You froze up.
Let's just use real estate as an example, because I was there. If I have $10,000 a month in my real estate business, then I can quit my job. So you got to find out what your goal is, and then once you reach that goal, that gives you that permission.
Let me ask you a few questions just to get your gut reaction. I'm bringing in as much money in my side hustle as I am from my full-time job. Should I quit my full-time job?
Well, I don't know, because do you like your full-time job? Does your full-time job have some kind of benefits to it that you're not going to have from your side hustle? Do you feel like you're burning the candle at both ends, or are you loving life? Are you staying busy? Okay. Now I know a lot of you out there, aren't huge fans of Trump, but he said this recently and it stuck with me so hard that like I have held on to it with all my being, because I think it's so important, especially for those of you that are getting financially independent out there. So now I've shifted the conversation from the younger people who are trying to, build up a side hustle, to those of you that are getting a little complacent in life. He said this: the best way to stave off depression, the best way to not be depressed, is to stay busy. If you're busy, you don't have time to be depressed. Now, for those of you who have a diagnosis, don't stop taking your medication and just get busy to think that's going to solve whatever you have. I'm not a doctor, but that really resonated with me, that, because in the times that I've sat and had a moment of being morose or melancholy, was those times where I just simply was not doing. I didn't have purpose. I didn't have drive. And so if your job and your side hustle are giving you that purpose and drive, and they're not interfering with other things in your life, keep it. What's the point of getting rid of it if you're making the same amount of money?
So, let me ask you about this, because it is a risk for a lot of people that are out there. I have a job. They're paying me a salary. I have this other concept that I want to develop as a business. I'm afraid that my employer is going to take my ideas. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because that is a definite concern.
Yeah. Why are you talking about your side hustle with your employer, I guess, is the question.
You know what? If the side hustle takes off, maybe the employer wants to figure it out and wants to get control of it.
Right.
There's some great examples of the Super Soaker. I remember watching an interview with the inventor of the Super Soaker, and he developed it while he had another engineering position. And his job tried to take ownership of it until he basically says, you're either keeping me or keeping the patent. You're not keeping both. What do you want? And they ended up agreeing to allow him to market it elsewhere. And that's how the Super Soaker, that wonderful, amazing squirt gun, came to be on every shelf in America rather than getting lost to history.
Oh, wow. You know, I just wish I could invent something.
Well,
I remember when I worked in when I first worked in real estate, the general contractor at my company came in and told us one day that he just went to some guy's house, and the house was amazing. It was in San Diego somewhere, and it was this amazing house. And so we asked the guy, what do you do that you have this amazing house? And he said, do you remember those things that they a lot of them came in, this is going to show how old we are, because if you're under the age of like 45, you're not going to know this story. Or you're not, maybe 40. But do you remember they used to have them in the bottom of cereal boxes as prizes, and they sold them back in the 80s. They were I think they were called creepy crawlers, although I can't really be sure. You would throw it up against the wall and it would like crawl down the wall.
Totally.
Do you remember those? The like the little sticky things? He invented that. He invented that, and it got him like a mansion in San Diego.
See, some of the other richest people that you're just surprised to hear they're incredibly rich. Met the guy that had the patent on the little safety protection discs that go at the end of rebar. That rebar, the metal bars that are required or needed for construction. Well, they're unsafe because they have pointy ends. All he did was create the rebar end caps and made hundreds of millions of dollars out of it.
Yeah, see, I need something like that. Well, every time I go to a gas station and you put the pump in, you see that the cap on the pump says like Healy, like vapor. It's like it holds all the vapors into the gas. And they're on most gas station pumps in the United States. And I'm like, who's this Healy guy? He's made all kinds of money. Yeah.
There's that. Also met the inventor of the postage scanner that the actual post office uses.
Oh yeah, the Pitney
Bowes
thing.
Yeah, he had the patent for that, sold that off. Yeah, and there was one invention, and his family for generations is taken care of.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. Well, I don't know. I haven't invented anything, so I'm still here talking to you guys about your side hustles.
But you create new things every day.
I do try to create things every day. I do try to be creative. And I think that actually is something that every one of you should also consider, is that you create something, if not every day, you create something at least once a week, whether you create a new system or you create a new piece of writing or you create a new piece of social media material, but you create, because that gets your brain working. And if nothing else, you'll have new creations. Not all creations are going to work out and be useful, but you'll at least be thinking those thoughts and putting that out to the universe, that creativity out to the universe.
I see entrepreneurship as just a different form of artistry. You have the painters. It
really is.
They've got their easel up, they have their canvas, and now they have to work within the rules of how to do a painting. But that's where then the creativity kicks in. And the exact same thing applies to starting a business, is there are rules and best practices to be successful at it. But that's also where you're able to leverage your creativity, not just for the product or the graphic design, but how are you going to create your company culture, and how are you going to create your systems so that you can build and scale that business at the end of the day.
Yeah, creativity is I thought I was, all through high school, I thought I was going to be, either a professional musician or a filmmaker. So, clearly I was a creative person, growing up, and I have had to channel that creativity into these, relatively not super exciting businesses. But there is an element of creativity in all of them, and there is, you are creating something. You're creating a business, you're creating jobs, you're creating these systems. And it whenever I'm creating, my brain feels happy. And I think that's for a lot of entrepreneurs out there. I think you do have to be a creative person. Doesn't mean you have to know how to sing or play an instrument. You just have to be able to create something.
We always talk about and bring up Elon Musk. He's a smart guy, but he's not in there coding everything. He doesn't know how to himself build a electric car, but he knows how to build a team with the right drive, goal, and mindset to have the team help create those goals or to reach the
Absolutely.
goals.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing. Like, people will point to that all the time, that he doesn't create anything, but he has the idea of what to create. And then he gets the people to create it for him, which I think is something in and of itself. Right. So, I think that is the thing, is just, you have to constantly be creating. You have to constantly be busy. You have to constantly be thinking about systems and how to improve the systems. And then also giving, and a big problem I think a lot of entrepreneurs have is with micromanagement and micromanaging and not giving their employees autonomy, but also giving employees autonomy once you have those systems in place, not beforehand, because otherwise you're just going to have a mess on your hands. Right. So, that's where I think you'd want to be with that.
Autonomy with oversight.
With autonomy with oversight. Oh God, you and I both know about not having proper oversight at times.
Again, that's where, and I know that some larger companies have done pretty good with the flat management strategy, Zappos being one of them, but they more create pods that may be 6-person teams that really, between those 6 people, they really lean in together. They hold each other accountable so that they have less or need less middle management oversight, but you still have a team that is relying on you to meet your goals as well. So,
I guess, Nate, maybe you can tell me whatever happened to Zappos. Do they still exist? Because I thought they sold to like Amazon or something, right?
Amazon owns them. They still exist. Really interesting why Amazon bought them. It's not because they were just intrigued and interested in shoes. It was because of the approach that the CEO of Zappos had of, we want to have the most advanced technology delivery system between the robotic warehouses and how to seamlessly get those into the packages and then to deliveries. That's really what Amazon was there to acquire. And you see it with these same day, next day deliveries that we all rely on nowadays. And all of that actually came from Zappos.
Listen, Jeff Bezos promised us back in like 2010 or something that we would be able to get drone packages, and he has still not achieved that. So he's dead to me. Anyhow, that's neither here nor there, because I'm pretty sure Jeff Bezos doesn't care that he's dead to me. I want to finish with going back to Hussam. He had talked about a concept that we connect patients in chronic pain with the correct provider that has the technology to help them in less than 30 minutes with no pills and no needles. And I challenged him saying, do you need money? And he said, no, it won't require lots of money. It's more of an established company that can add this business concept to its services. Hussam, start dialing for dollars.
Marketing.
Yeah. Just pick up the phone, start doing social media, and do some outbound calls and outbound sales and outbound emails and write the people that you need to get in touch with. This is a matter of elbow grease, honestly.
And I think that's the one of the biggest takeaways that everybody should be running with, is sometimes you just have to put yourself out there, whether
Right.
it's picking up the phone and calling, whether it's putting yourself out in social media, whether it's you showing up every Tuesday at noon Central to have a discussion about entrepreneurship. It is about just putting yourself out there and making good things happen.
Yes, everybody who's watching, you should make this part of your system. Part of your system is checking out the Entrepreneur live stream every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 Central, 11 Mountain, 10 Pacific. I just have to say them all. I'm actually not in any of those time zones either. I'm in AST, so it's 3 o'clock here. And with that, we're going to end. But before we do, I want to encourage you, if you have any questions or you want us to cover a certain subject, you can reach me at Jillian@JillianSedoti.com, and we'll address it here on one of our episodes. Any final words, Nathaniel?
I think we went through some of the most important things. For you got off the starting line, where do you go from there? And let's think about scaling. So I'm glad we were able to hit these really important subjects today.
Me too. Awesome, guys. Check us out next week. We'll see you all soon. Bye.